We are Rogue Media Sports.
Having a teen feels like having your own live-in influencer. Somehow you know the latest makeup trend and the fact that skinny jeans are not the most flattering pants. Now it's time for you to show them what's up, thanks to Domino's. From April 22nd through April 28th, carry out as many large 2-topping pizzas from Domino's as you want, for only $6.99 each. And teach your kiddo that saving money and Domino's pizza will never go out of style. Carry out only. You must ask for this limited time offer. Valid 4/22 through 4/28. Tax may apply. Prices, participation, and charges may vary.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It's a Doomsday podcast, and it's an unusual situation. We appreciate everybody who's been asking us, "Hey, where's the podcast?" Well, we decided after having some conversations that maybe it'd be best to wait and see who the Cowboys were going to play. I think it was the right decision, but we appreciate everybody who's so used to us having podcasts right after games. Meanwhile, Ed Werder has had to go to Houston, cover Titans and Texans, because obviously that Titans game meant something because they had a shot at getting the number 1 overall seed, all of that. So Ed had to go there. Ed has already had time to, because that was a noon game, make it back. And Ed, that's I guess the reason you're back now is because just American Airlines does such a good job. And so I think they took good care of you, right?
They did a better job getting me home than they did getting me to Houston. There was some question about whether I was even going to be there in time for the game. Fortunately, we leave a day before these assignments, or else I might miss a game now and then. It was a bad experience yesterday. You know, it's only a 44-minute flight, but American Airlines operating in a pandemic, no doubt short-staffed, turned it into about an 8-hour odyssey yesterday, and almost jeopardized my ability to watch the Cowboys-Eagles game, but not quite. And so it was funny. I took this public. I don't always take my disagreements with them public, but when I think they failed to a certain level, I will tweet about my experience, which you might imagine engenders a whole lot of positive reinforcement from all my Twitter followers who feel a great deal of sympathy for me and my first world problems, as they like to call them. Anyway, so Sam Ponder, I was warned this morning when she was throwing to me at my game, the Titans-Houston game, that I had to pay attention because she might say something that I needed to react to live. They wouldn't tell me what it was, but I assumed that it was going to be about my travel issues. And sure enough, when she threw to me, she said something like, and, Ed Werder's in Houston where, he lives so nearby, he could probably he probably drove to the game. And so I had to come up with something pithy in response to that. The best I could do in the moment on live television was to say something to the effect of, I didn't realize until now just how far Dallas is from Houston. And if it takes 8 hours to fly there, there's no way I would ever consider driving that distance. So that was my attempt at a humorous repartee with the delightful Sam Ponder, who hosts our Sunday NFL Countdown show. Yeah,
I'm familiar with the work. Yeah.
So I did cover the Titans, who were one of the few teams to deliver today, and to take all of the advantages available to them as the number 1 seed. Remarkable. They're the first team since 1975 to win the number 1 seed without having their leading rusher play at least half the games. Derrick Henry's been out for, I think, since Halloween. And so he's missed 10. This was his 10th game today that he missed. He started practicing again last week, 2-time NFL rushing champion. And a lot of people thought that they were not going to survive that injury given their reliance on Derrick Henry, but they did nicely. They've had a lot of COVID issues, and Mike Vrabel's a Coach of the Year candidate because he's navigated not only the Derrick Henry injury, but all of his adversity where they've had to play. I think the final count now is 91 different players have been on the game day roster at one point or another for the Tennessee Titans, who now know that they won't in 6 days or 7 days have to have Derrick Henry ready to play. You'll get the luxury of 2 more weeks to get prepared physically to return to the lineup. And then they've got, 2 home games, 2 home games from the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I had to catch up because I like to kind of see what you're up to. And I was like, wait, why is Ed having to go see this game? And I started looking back because every time I watch the Titans this year, they happen to lose. So it was kind of like, we're so focused on the Cowboys. I'm like, dang, they're playing for a number 1 seed. This is crazy. Okay, that's why Ed has to go to this game. And I think even the Texans coach gave you something interesting before the game. You tweeted about how he said Davis Mills could be like a franchise quarterback. And he
said he could win a championship with him if he continues to improve as he has in his rookie season. Obviously a lot of news from there early in the year about this unique Deshaun Watson situation. And he didn't play a single snap. And so I think one of the remarkable things, David Culley, I don't know, he might get fired. There's a very good chance he'll get fired after one season, whether you think that's right or that's wrong. But to put it in context, they went 4-12 last year in Houston with Deshaun Watson leading the NFL in passing. And they went into this game today 4-12 with Deshaun Watson not taking a single snap. So in my mind, David Culley did a pretty good job considering these unique circumstances in play where he was denied his best player.
Well,
through no fault of his own, but through plenty of fault of Deshaun Watson's.
Yeah, I believe so. But, it'll be sad if that happens to Culley, but it's happening to coaches across the league right now. It doesn't seem deserving. All right. It is time for us to dig in to some Cowboys. I would like to ask our executive producer and good friend, Mark Frito Friedman. Frito, please play the music. Yes, thank you, Ronnie Foss, for that. And, in fact, thank you, Ronnie Foss, for having me out to the Mavs game the other night to watch the Dirk retirement. They retired his jersey head. That was kind of a neat moment and really cool deal that we enjoyed. And our singer-songwriter of Doomsday made that happen. He is an employee of the Dallas Mavericks. All right.
Is he really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was. He was a CF.
And he only had one pass, apparently, huh?
Which
he only had one seat in the suite.
We'd love to get you in there. You've never shown much interest in the Mavs. You can see Ed in his background has a nice Cowboys helmet. Love the background, Ed. In fact, our YouTube, Frito keeps getting mad at me. I don't think we're even putting anything on YouTube, but I keep referring to all these visuals. Ed, the Cowboys last night just just absolutely annihilate the Eagles, and we all think, well, they should have done that. And 51-26 is the final score. As you spent all day getting into town, you get into Houston, and you start getting to watch this effort. Ed, did you kind of come away from that game thinking, okay, I think that could be a good thing for the Cowboys, or did you find yourself, even as they were piling up all those points, and Dak was throwing for the, setting team records, there's been a little debate on Twitter on, okay, is this team just like trying to get people records? Did they really need to be playing these people that long? Where did you fall in all that? And do you think there was something to be gained by leaving everybody in as long as they did? Because Eagles were without like 16 or 17 starters. I mean, they basically, if you were playing for the Eagles, you had to be looking around like, what's my future? What's my future here? And the Cowboys had everybody they could out there playing, through the third quarter. Smart decision, you think, or bad decision, or will we find out next weekend?
Well, I think that Mike McCarthy was clearly hell-bent on this approach because, I participated in some of the pregame interviews during the week with them. And, that was his goal when he started the week, which was, hey, this is our first time going into the playoffs as a group, and I want everybody to feel comfortable and have a lot of confidence. And so we're going to play this game to win, even though, there's only a minuscule chance that it's going to affect our playoff seeding. As it turns out, obviously it does, and we could talk more about that. But to the approach, it seemed like, geez, they have so many guys, test positive for COVID or be sick, and now they're down like 6 starters. Maybe McCarthy will change his approach to this game, and he didn't. He didn't change it at all. This was, like I said, he was just determined to create some kind of confidence in that offense. Like, I don't think if they were the least bit confident in the way they were playing on offense, especially in the passing game, I don't think they would have exposed Dak Prescott to that risk that last night. Certainly not for that long a time. I mean, what's he doing playing in a game that's not big enough for Jalen Hurts? I mean, I know the Eagles had, different priorities and they were kind of stuck at 6 or 7 in terms of the seeding, and the Cowboys had slightly maybe more incentive from a practical point of view. But this was really about capturing emotion, and it was creating confidence going into the postseason. And I'm just not sure that they can do that. Maybe I'll be proven wrong. I'm sure they feel great about themselves right now, but to me, prove it you can score points in the NFC East. That's not been an issue for the Cowboys. They've scored a record number of points against teams in the NFC East. They're undefeated against the NFC East. And, so they scored 51 points, their second highest point total. Going into the game, their 2 highest point games were 43 against the Falcons and 56 against the Washington football team. And both times the next week, they went outside the division and played and lost. So I'm not sure what they achieved last night is going to have the desired carryover effect that McCarthy took the big risk with so many starters to provide. Maybe it will. Maybe they'll play great. But I just don't think that there's not any proof based on the way they've played this year that what they did against the Eagles is going to have a pronounced carryover effect.
Yeah, well, what it does, I think if you really got somebody to be honest with you, they'd say, we were trying to get Cedric Wilson paid. And
it was like everything, right? He led every single running back, Ito Smith, Corey Clement, Jaquan. I mean, they all scored a touchdown so that the Cowboys could have the record for the most different players who scored a touchdown on one team in any NFL season. I mean, that's the length of it. Like, Mike was like, hey, somebody tell me what that other record is we don't have yet. All right, let's get that. Jaquan Hardy, get in there. You're running the draw. I mean, he wanted every record there possibly could be.
You're making me laugh. Now I'm thinking of all the tweets. I think I could have some fun tweets either late tonight or the morning. When's the best time to do jokes on Twitter? You think late at night or like at about 9? I got to figure out the best time to land. Sometimes they land like really well. Sometimes they don't take off for me. But I love that, what you're saying, because I think there's some truth to that. 22 different players scored. And by the way, our old paper just goes crazy for that stuff. Did you see on the front page, like they have it all broken up? 15 for this group, 5 for this group, 2 or whatever, 3 for the special teams, whatever that all adds up to get to 22. And we're just all celebrating along.
It wasn't, at some point, it wasn't about winning the game anymore. It was by winning by as many points as humanly possible. And it was about getting as many records as you could possibly collect in a single evening to, distinguish this team and the way it's played this year. When in reality, despite all the points, like they haven't been that impressive on offense. And, Mike McCarthy comes in after the game and makes the joke about, Dak played pretty good for a guy in a slump, and it was a well-intended joke. But let's not pretend that they didn't play horrible on offense for 2 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we just acknowledge that Dak Prescott and the offense had big problems for 2 months? Now, I will say this. I give Dak Prescott a lot of credit for, coming back from the injury, the first significant injury of his NFL career, and throwing the third most touchdown passes in the history of the NFL for any quarterback who missed the previous season or missed most of the previous season. I think only Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning had thrown more than his 37 touchdown passes, and, breaking Tony Romo's record when he was drafted and when he started even that whole first year in 2016, despite the incredible success that he created right away, nobody, I think, believe this guy was going to go break any record that Tony Romo set throwing a football. And so to do it coming off the injury and with the burden of being the highest paid player in franchise history and the scrutiny that comes with that, I give Dak Prescott a lot of credit for that. But otherwise, it was just a ridiculous accumulation of records.
That's what it felt like throughout that game. Now, Ed, I didn't want to take this opportunity, by the way. There's something, Hodges Capital is a great partner of ours, and they're doing something with their Hodges private client. And I went to this and found this on HodgesPrivateClient.com, and is where this is. Ed, what they're doing for people now, and they've always, for 30 years, they've been unbelievable at people that are investing. But here's the deal. If you have moved into the Dallas-Fort Worth area, or you live somewhere else, because obviously they can do all this stuff online, and they can help you streamline your existing portfolio, retirement income and investing plan, and proactive client service from industry veterans. The Hodges, in fact, my buddy Craig Hodges, he goes on CNBC. He's one of the great analysts. They have this incredible team, and what they don't do to you is just kind of let your retirement sit there. They look at it. If bonds are best, they would do that. Bonds right now, I don't think are the best move for people, so they say, we're not doing bonds. I want to give you the way to get a hold of them. Call the Hodges. It's Craig and Clark Hodges and their incredible team there at 833-629-2240. Ed, I know you want to do this for another 15, 20 years maybe at ESPN, but, there'll be a retirement someday, and you have a nice retirement already. A lot of it's tied up into
I've already been retired once before. I got to try it, remember?
Yeah, you didn't. That was not your choice, but
and I don't think the next time will be my choice either.
None of us really get to choose. But Hodges Capital, thank you so much for being an incredible partner with us at the Doomsday podcast. All right, Ed, so any other thing that you gained from watching, Kelvin Joseph, Nashawn Wright, your two rookies got to be out there for a while, some sacks, they continue to generate, a pretty good pass rush. Basham had a sack. Tristan Hill. I kind of like seeing Tristan chasing the quarterback around. Gardner Minshew's not a bad quarterback, and they did a nice job. Anything that you saw from the Cowboys on defense that you want to comment on? Well,
I thought they, wisely didn't risk Randy Gregory, and of course Micah Parsons didn't play at all, and Trayvon Diggs didn't play at all, so they were not unnecessarily exposed to the potential of an injury in a game like that. But they're obviously a really athletic group. I think Kelvin Joseph is a guy who can maybe, help them in this playoff run. At some point, you're going to play a team, if you last long enough, that can, really hurt you with the passing game. And Joseph seems like a physical type of corner. He's got more size than Jordan Lewis or Anthony Brown. And they seem a little bit out on those two guys. Like they'd like to find somebody who's better. And maybe Kelvin Joseph can offer that, possibility of improving here in the second part of the season.
Ed, the Cowboys will also ask this week the players at least consider not going to Mavs games or not going to concerts and things like that. Do you think that's a fair thing of the Cowboys ownership and coaches to ask of them?
Yeah, well, and, McCarthy said the other day when I participated in his press conference that the hotel, the Intercontinental Hotel at the Star, has been made available for quite some time, and some people are taking advantage of that. And I think it would be a great thing if the players would, all just go check in and reduce the possibility of losing somebody of consequence, to in a playoff game because of COVID. It's a very real thing. It's a very contagious, obviously, variant right now with the Omicron. It's a concern for every coach and every player in the league. McCarthy said his first stop every morning is with trainer Jim Maurer to see who's tested and who's on the list and who's feeling well and who's not. And so I think that would be a way to alleviate a lot of the concern. And the players were willing to do it last year at training camp. So if you're willing to do it at training camp last year, why not do it now?
Yeah, I was just checking here. I agree with you. Apparently, the players are saying that at the Intercontinental is under the IHG umbrella, and they would rather have Marriott points.
Jerry's probably collecting all the points if he's paying all the bills. Maybe he should be.
Okay. Oh, by the way, Intercontinental owns Holiday Inn, Candlewood, and Hotel Indigo. I don't know if you've ever seen Hotel Indigo.
I've been in. That's a very chic place.
Yeah, it's okay. They've got one in Waco, in fact, a Hotel Indigo, if you can believe that. We're near my campus. Okay, Ed, the other thing we need to move to right now is something that's just happened, and the whole reason we waited till tonight to do this, about an hour or two ago before we were taping, we got the news because San Francisco, and I got to watch all this, and Ed, you were making your way back, and I think got to kind of watch some of the game. But
I was following it on Twitter.
Yeah.
While I was sitting on the plane,
Jimmy Garoppolo, I mean, that was tremendous. They were going to have. They had 3 timeouts. They had one last chance. I didn't look great to me. They were going to have to start
87 yards.
Yeah. Had to start at their own 12-yard line, and just boom, boom, boom. He marches them down the field. It was a pretty amazing thing, and in fact, they scored with I think about 25 seconds left, and then they got the ball and went right down, got a field goal, and then got an interception to end the game. I mean, pretty amazing comeback to be down 20-0.
Wow.
Just not looking good at all, and to come back. Ed, I think I would worry not so much about, is it Arizona? Is it the Rams? Is it San Francisco? A thing like that. We're talking about the Cowboys maybe feeling better about themselves, what happened in Philadelphia. What San Francisco just did has to give them quite a bit of confidence to really go anywhere this next weekend and perform. So we can debate who is the better matchup, but just from a standpoint of confidence, I would say San Francisco will arrive feeling pretty good about themselves.
Well, to put into context what you said about how unlikely it was that Jimmy Garoppolo would drive the 49ers on the road at the Rams, the length of the field, 87 yards for a game-tying touchdown. The analytics on that were that was less likely to happen than Tom Brady coming back from 28-3 down at halftime to win the Super Bowl against Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan, who, by the way, will be involved in this matchup at AT&T Stadium next week when the Cowboys host the San Francisco 49ers. So that's how unlikely that was. And, Jimmy Garoppolo missed last week's game. They started Trey Lance, the first-round draft pick that they traded so many assets to acquire at the expense of Jimmy Garoppolo. A lot of people thought, they know he's going to take his position eventually. Some thought it might be now. Some thought he might get a lot of playing time because he's a running quarterback. But really not a lot of college experience. In fact, the fewest passing attempts of any quarterback drafted in the first year in the last 40 years, Trey Lance. But Garoppolo, to his credit, missed the game last week with a thumb injury. Comes back this week and did, just what you said, just led this incredibly unlikely drive in the fourth quarter and overtime to push his team into the playoffs and into this game against Dallas. So we talked about the risk that the Cowboys took. And so what they gained was they advanced to the 3rd seed, which is important in that it means that they won't have to play Aaron Rodgers at Lambeau Field until the NFC Championship game, should they get there. But they will likely have to defeat Tom Brady in Tampa during the divisional playoffs for that to happen. So they probably have to go on the road and beat Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers to get to the Super Bowl, unless somebody does it for them.
Yeah, and that seems unlikely. And just to put a little bit more perspective on this, the betting odds have started to come out, and some of the main ones have the Cowboys as 3-point favorites. Now, of all the wild card games, that is the closest. Incidentally, there's no pick'ems or anything like that. That's the closest game, which makes you think that this, on a neutral field, this would be a pick'em type game, the way they would regard. And the Cowboys obviously have a better record than the 49ers do, but the 49ers, have some. Deebo Samuel, was incredible today. I mean, they just got some really nice performances. They got a running back named Mitchell that I wasn't totally familiar with. He looks good.
Elijah Mitchell. Yeah, Elijah Mitchell. That's the thing with the 49ers. I would say that this is a better matchup, in my opinion, for Dallas because they're a more traditional offense at the quarterback position than, say, the Arizona Cardinals if they had been forced to play the Cardinals again. And that was far the most likely scenario, was playing the Cardinals again because, the thing Dallas needs turnovers. They need Dan Quinn's defense to create turnovers. They didn't do that against Arizona, and Arizona to me is a bad matchup for them because Arizona doesn't turn the ball over. They've tied the NFL record 6 games on the road without turning the ball over. So they do that. They take that away from you, and then they negate your pass rush because the quarterback's such a great athlete. You're afraid to rush him. That won't be the case against Garoppolo. Garoppolo, often his errors decide the outcome of San Francisco's games. In fact, the 49ers are 1-6 when Jimmy Garoppolo throws an interception, and they're 7-0 when he doesn't. But obviously they're a physical team. They got a great tight end in George Kittle. They're always going to be able to run the ball. That's what Kyle Shanahan's teams always do, just like his father's teams, Mike Shanahan's. They always run the ball. They're going to run it 40 times. And Deebo Samuel, you're right, he's a total freak. I mean, today he's been running the ball like a running back. He's a thick-bodied wide receiver, thick hips, thick thighs, really tough physical receiver. And, not too long ago, he led the NFL in attempts per carry and in yards per catch in attempts per carry among running backs and in yards per catch among wide receivers. So he was incredibly productive in this unique way that Kyle Shanahan uses him. And to me, that's going to be the big challenge. But Dallas's athleticism will be a bigger factor in this matchup, in my opinion, than it would have been another matchup against the Cardinals.
All right. And, boy, I tell you, I hope is that how you describe me to people? Thick hips, thick thighs? Is that
thick skull?
That's the dang truth right there. As we're recording this, breaking news is coming in, and so we want to let you know that we now know that the Cowboys and Niners will play Sunday at AT&T Stadium at 3:30. And
that's a surprise to me.
Yeah. So
I'm surprised that they're not on Sunday Night Football. I'm sure it was a big fight.
Don't you know it?
Between NBC and Fox as to who would get that game. But that's great. Yeah. Fantastic. I'm much happier with that than waiting around for the Sunday night game.
Yeah, and you already know you're automatically credentialed to cover that game, and my credential, I'll just kind of be waiting to see. Sometimes it does. Sometimes I'll probably be there.
I mean, I think you gotta tell Whitney when you apply for your credential.
Already did.
All that you endured, last week to come back and cover that game. That you drove back 9 hours from Louisiana, breakneck speed, and just to be there for that game and honor the value of that credential. So I think you've demonstrated the importance of the Cowboys in your life.
I think you certainly do.
And every once in a while we do have to pledge allegiance to the almighty star.
Yeah, that's fine. But you realize when talking about me, you don't want to use the phrase breakneck speed.
Yeah, I guess not. You do that on a bicycle.
Yeah, given my history. Okay. All right. It is now time to hear our weekly segment from one of the harshest graders of them all, and a man who has a lot of opinions about all of this. It is time for Stretch Plays with Glenn Stretch Smith. Stretch, welcome in as we kind of have we'll have a quick look back at the game, then we're going to do a look ahead. But the Cowboys obviously put it on some scrubs, and that's what you got to do. No shame in that. You go out there and you put it on them. And 51-20 win over the Eagles. Had them at the half, I think down 30-17, and just built on it from there. Let's start with the quarterback. Did you? I know there were a few things that you saw the other night that reminded you of like Dak when he's been really good in the past. What were your biggest takeaways from Dak's evening? Five touchdowns, and then by the way, the Cowboys record now for most touchdowns in a regular season.
Yeah, I mean, let me say this: they went out and handled business. I mean, I I mean, I'm not real sure I would refer to them as scrubs, Mosley. I mean, they're NFL players, but yeah, I mean, they went out and beat a JV team that they should have beaten. I think that you talk about Dak, and what I liked was right before the half, the drive before the half when he hit Sid Wilson on that seam throw. What I liked was, number one, I love the route he ran. He pressed right at the safety, and when he did, he was able to leave the quarterback with an option to throw the ball in the middle of the field. Then he could be the bender. Most guys would think, hey, I got to run away from that safety, and it shuts down the window for the quarterback. I really like how it was the first time really in a while that I had seen Dak put his back foot in the ground and really let the ball rip. Let me say this too. I mean, cold conditions. I mean, that was not the ideal conditions to be throwing the football in, but he really let the ball rip. And then on that drive to feed it to Schultz for the touchdown, I saw some really good things on that drive. Now you go back and you say, still the inconsistency. I mean, he had CD on the deep dig wide open, and CD had to go, kind of on his back shoulder to get the football there. And it's easy to be critical, and it's hard to show the positive, I think. And right now, when you look at how Dak is playing, it's very inconsistent. But what I do like is I like that they went 22 degrees, a place that's not ideal conditions, and he led the football team and threw some really nice balls. So I think I give a lot of credit to both Dak. I think you got to give some credit to Kellen Moore. I mean, I had been critical of him last week of feeling like he had absolutely been outcoached by Vance Joseph in the Arizona game. So being able to get back in sync and in line with your coordinator, and yeah, they beat kind of their 2s and 3s in Philadelphia, but going out and handling business, I think Dak did a heck of a job, and I hope that breeds the confidence going into this playoff stretch right here. So we'll have to see how that goes. But the other thing that I liked offensively, I still like putting McGovern back in there at fullback. Matt, I like Jarwin at tight end. I think he's a more physical blocker. I think the offensive line played a little better. I was a little confused on one sack where they turned the center Biotish over to help Zach, and Connor Williams, got beat up inside. There's still a few things that I don't understand, but I think starting with the quarterback and then what you said offensively, I really liked Noah Brown in the game. I think that he's going to be able to do some things physically in the run game, and I wish they would use him more, but I know that's probably more than you were looking for in one question, but I don't care. I'm going to give it to you anyway tonight.
No, I just sit back and I learn. If I'm nothing if not a listener. Glenn Stretch Smith making his weekly appearance. Also, he'll have TV duties. WFAA Channel 8, that's the ABC affiliate here in North Texas. Stretch, I did want to hear what you thought too of the running game. You talked about the offensive line a little bit. Zeke looked like he had a spark. For whatever reason, Zeke has not wanted to sit out. He's wanted to keep trying to play through this. He alluded to, Jerry at one point said he had a bone bruise. Zeke has acted like it was actually something else. Who knows? Not every player wants everybody to know exactly what's wrong with him. But did you at least see a little bit of a burst? Obviously, some of those other runners looked pretty good throughout the evening. Hardy had the touchdown. Ito came in there, did some good things. Judge Ito. What did you think about Zeke's night, though?
You're never going to hear me be critical of Zeke. I mean, I think Zeke is still a heck of a football player. He can run the football. It's week 17 of the NFL, and guess what? They're all beat up. Everybody's beat up. I don't care. You look across the board, and even today with the Cowboys playing on Saturday night, you get a chance to watch a bunch of these games. There are a bunch of guys that are beat up, but I do like how he's tried to play through that. And yes, he hasn't been 100%, but I think you saw, Matt, him hit those north and south runs. I believe he's a north and south runner. I know you've heard me say this on here. He's not going to be a big zone runner. He's not going to press the outside hip of the tackle and roll it back where it feels good. He's a north and south guy. And I think when you get him in those north and south situations, and you get that, he's got that noggin on him. I mean, he gets that thing going north and south, and he's hard to bring down.
He does, and it was good to see him get out, have a long carry. Had a couple of carries last night from different backs that were in like the 30-yard range. That's a sight for sore eyes. I think that final score, by the way, was 51-26. I think I might have said 51-20. I think the Eagles did throw that last touchdown pass out there from Gardner Minshew II. Good to see Gardner out there getting some time. And, Stretch, I was curious, where are you with this kicker? You've been a guy that, for whatever reason, Bones Fossil has really started to grow on you, so you hadn't been as tough on Bones lately. But this Zuerlein is not the most trustworthy guy in the building these days. I think that's 6 missed kicks, 6 missed extra points this season. If I'm not mistaken, those are from 33 yards out. You want to hit those. Stretch, what would you be doing if you were kind of over special teams right now and you were going into battle with this kicker? Is there just nothing you can do, or would you be looking around?
Well, I think you got to build him up from a confidence standpoint. I do think that you can tell. I mean, his leg swing is a little inconsistent, but he's so strong, and I think you can't replace experience in that situation. So as much as anything, I think I'd be just leaving him alone and letting him get in a rhythm. I mean, it's again, I make a lot of analogies to the golf swing, and it's a lot like that. I mean, you've got to get in that groove. You got to get in that leg whip. And that's right. If y'all can see Mosley right now, he's got his square toe on, and he's up there giving he's going to give us the golf turn right there. Boy, that's stiff, Mosley. But hey, the bottom line is you got to get back in to where you feel good and you've got that, you're in that rhythm. So no, I don't think there's a whole lot you can do. I think you just got to kind of hold your breath every time he gets up there to kick it.
Just hope he makes a good swing. I tell you, I admired that kicker today. That Robbie Gould had to stick him back there and punt. And think about how San Francisco won that game. Gould had to go back there and kick from his own goal line, and that sucker hit it with he's a kicker. He's not a punter. And he hit a 42-yard with huge hang time, and they had to fair catch it at their own 40 or whatever. It was a huge difference in the game. Kicking is part of the deal, okay? And I know you love it when I talk special teams, Stretch, and then you just see. I wish you could. I don't know if you've ever seen my swing. I mean, the injury I had, the surgery took a few yards away from me, but at times I still can really get after the ball.
Well, I'll tell you what, Mosley, I'm sitting here watching it, and that swing is stiffer than a wedding. You know what? So I'm not going to use the word right here. But boy, oh boy, yeah. I can only imagine the follow through, and I've seen what type of foot athlete you are, so I know that you probably bring that old right foot back through and give it to West Texas. There it is. Whoa, yeah. Oh boy, I tell you what, if we had some of that steak sauce right there, I'd dappen it on that right there, Mosley.
Oh, man, that stuff, that goodness steak seasoning. Bring the tasty.com. Thank you, Jason Velo, for putting that all over our vegetables. I like to put it on a chicken, a little steak, something like that. Okay, Stretch, let's look ahead, though. Jimmy Garoppolo is a hot quarterback. I mean, he was throwing it. He was whipping that thing. And a little bit like Dak, somebody I saw on Twitter made an interesting point. He's one of those guys that can be a little streaky himself. But, man, that guy is going to arrive next weekend with quite a bit of confidence. Were you thinking Arizona rematch was better for the Cowboys? And now that it's San Francisco, how do you think that matchup sets up for the Cowboys?
Well, I think when you get in the playoffs, I mean, bottom line is you're going to have to go play a really good quarterback. It's a quarterback league. All the quarterbacks, again, whether it's Stafford, whether it's, Murray, whether it's Garoppolo, you're going to have to go play a good one. I think I don't like the matchup a whole lot for the Cowboys because I do think that San Francisco runs the football really well. And when they can run the ball well, then that that helps Garoppolo. You made or somebody you mentioned made earlier the comparison to Dak. I think some of that is true. When they can run the football and he can play action off of that, it can give you some real problems. But I think the thing that scares me more than anything is Kittle, because Kittle can set the edge, he can block, he can threaten the deep middle, and he can hit the home run for you. So would I have rather played Arizona back in here? I would say yes. Do I think it really matters in the big scheme of things? It does not. You're going to have to go play a team that's got a good quarterback, and all of these teams offensively have a lot of different weapons, Matt. So I think that plays to the Cowboys' strengths right now, what the Cowboys are doing defensively. We didn't talk a lot about what they did last night, but I love seeing Nashawn Wright and Kelvin Joseph over the long corners, big corners. I mean, that was good to see those guys get some playing time. So I'm saying, hey, regardless of what the matchup is or who we'd like to see them play, I think that you're just going to have to continue to sharpen your game, and hopefully, you go get after Garoppolo and you can sack him some. He's not as mobile as those other guys. So I think that, that part of it plays into the Cowboys' hands a little bit.
All right, Cowboys apparently, Stretch, are not going to go to any Mavs games this week, so they're all going to stay home and bubble up a little bit and try to get right and get ready for this ball game. It's going to be fun, and cannot wait for this matchup. And I'm very impressed with what I saw from San Francisco today. So I'm kind of with you, though. Kyler Murray is an otherworldly kind of character. He's a, if he can get outside the pocket, beat you, he can do so many things. They're going to encounter a guy that's a little bit easier to keep in the pocket. I'm not, Jimmy can move around, but I think they could have some success against him. All right. Stretch, I did want to mention, by the way, Power to Thrive. Power to Thrive is a new book by Rich Cavanis. And Rich has become a friend of mine. And Stretch, you're a guy who likes to go to a non-denominational church and see a man in dress sneakers out there talking to the congregation. I'll tell you that what my man Rich does, he shows up at some of these churches of all different denominations. And he has an unbelievable message. And there's some things I've read that have helped me showing up on time. I know you don't think that really happens, but leaving yourself a margin. 2 Timothy 1:7, by the way. That's where this book comes from. And do you have your Bible with you, Stretch? Could you look that up? No, I don't think you do. But powertothrive.net is where you could go, sign up, put your email, and you get the free book. Stretch, does that sound like a book you might enjoy?
Yeah, I might take a gander. I guess initially my first thought would be is, when you're taking tidbits and pieces out about what might help you, what chapter does it say, get a damn haircut, Mosley? You still look like a mutt. Listen. You and Chip Gaines are trying to get in a battle of who can be Rapunzel. Come on, Mosley. Stuff cut. I
literally don't even know who that is, whoever you just brought up. There was one point I was going to make about either Kyler Murray or Jimmy G that I wanted to bring up again. All right, Stretch, I want you to have a good evening, and whoever's filling in for Joe tonight, tell him I said hey, okay? It might be... I'll do that, Matt. You and Frito have yourself a great evening. All right, and there it was. Stretch, volatile as always, but mostly toward me, and my continued lack of a haircut bothers him. I mean, he's like an old coach. I guess he was a coach and a scout, but he thinks I should at some point get a haircut. I don't have like an earring, or he seems like a guy to be mad at earrings. And have you ever thought about getting an earring? Did it ever occur to you?
Have.
Never did. I could see
no tattoos, no earrings. Can you imagine that?
No, yes, that's exactly what I would think of you. It is the Doomsday podcast, and as we start to analyze this Sunday's game, again, Cowboys-Niners is going to be Sunday at 3:30, and obviously that'll be a game assigned to Fox.
Troy Aikman will be doing it. Oh, and how perfect that he can reflect on all those great 90s matchups in the NFC Championship game between the Cowboys and the 49ers. 3 matchups in the NFC Championship game in a 4-year period. The winner was the Super Bowl champion each year. Those were some great times for those 2 franchises.
Yeah. They went on. I mean, in a sense, those were the Super Bowls. Those 3 matchups were the Super Bowls. First time since then. Now, they've had some memorable, the T.O. on the star, the George Teague. There'll be some interesting side notes to this one. But, Ed, you were on the scene for those huge matchups back in the day. Do you does this? I guess this conjures up some old memories. So, who do you immediately, having covered those games, do you immediately just think of the triplets? Like, what's the first 49er? Do you think of Steve Young immediately? Who's the Niner? Who's the first Cowboy you think of in those matchups?
I think the first Cowboy I think of is Jimmy Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Because of his bold comment about we will win the ball game, put it in 3-inch headlines. And then George Seifert, the 49ers coach, coming into town the next day for the game. And there was a press conference when they arrived, and somebody asked George Seifert about what Jimmy had said. And George said, well, he's got balls, and tomorrow we'll find out if they're brass or paper mache. And one of the great exchanges between 2 coaches who were about to, lead their teams into an NFC Championship game that you've ever had. And the Cowboys, winning the game out there in 92 under such adverse conditions in a situation where nobody really expected it to happen. And, then Jimmy, that's when he blurted out how about them Cowboys? And that became a moment. The Cowboys, losing Ken Norton in free agency to the 49ers at the height of this rivalry, then stealing Deion Sanders away, the Deion Sanders-Michael Irvin matchups in those games, the boldness in 92 of Norv Turner to throw the ball off his own goal line, unlike what the Giants did today. Throw the ball off the goal line to Alvin Harper instead of running 2 quarterback sneaks from your own 4-yard line, but throwing a post to Alvin Harper for 80 yards to clinch that game and send the Cowboys to that first Super Bowl. Yeah, a lot of great memories of those rivalries and being out of Candlestick for the first time and just kind of being awed by the whole 49er experience out there and covering these championship games for the first time in my career. It was incredibly memorable and made a huge impression on me about how much I love the game and kind of set the stage for my whole career, in my opinion.
Yeah. It launched Ed Werder. I'm
the best thing to come out of that rivalry.
I think that's where we've arrived. Who was the guy that was in charge of Candlestick? Was it George Toma?
Toma, yeah, the grass god, the sod guy, the sod guy.
Yeah. That place was, what's funny is he had the greatest reputation in the world, and that place was always such a mess.
But it wouldn't have been playable if it weren't for him.
George Tome is the only one that could make that thing. All right, a little correction here. We assumed that maybe Troy and Fox would have this thing. It's actually televised on CBS. It'll be
really?
It'll be on CBS, Paramount Plus, Amazon Prime, and Nickelodeon. Do not forget about the Nickelodeon broadcast where after scores,
somebody's going to get slimed after this game.
They'll get slimed. They'll let Nate Burleson and whoever participate in all that. But this will be a CBS game, which obviously means Nance and Tony Romo will be on the scene. It was going to be a former Cowboys quarterback either way. It just happens to be the CBS crew. That's funny, Ed. I was thinking like you. You think Cowboys, Niners, NFC,
Fox, late window.
Yeah. No. I don't know what. We'll see what the other break.
So I guess then we won't have all the great 90s memories. We'll have Tony Romo talking about the time he got an injection for his pneumothorax in the locker room before playing that game against the 49ers when he broke his rib and it punctured his lung. Remember that?
Yeah. Came out played. And then I want to say the hero of that was Jesse. Didn't Jesse Holley catch I think he caught and had a long touchdown in that game, and the Cowboys found a way to beat the 49ers.
Don't they always?
Might have been the following week. They was it that trip? I'm trying to remember that they stayed out there and then got beat by the Raiders. I remember it was so cool. I was down there on the sideline next to Ice Cube. I just thought that was the greatest. That was the greatest thing. Just hanging with Ice Cube because he was a big Raiders guy. Doomsday podcast continues on, and boy, been a fun evening. And I'm glad we kind of waited. Ed, good idea by you, because I'm sort of, I'm a creature of habit. I like to do these things right after games, but last night's game just didn't mean what they normally mean. And so today was interesting, though. There were some games, and then tonight, what is it, Ed? You're good at knowing how these things work, but I think I saw where tonight, if the two teams could tie, it would get them both in the playoffs. Is that right? The Raiders and the
Raiders
Chargers?
And the Chargers, yeah, correct. And it would knock Pittsburgh back out. And so people were curious, and some of these games almost did end in a tie. Today the Rams and Niners could have ended in a tie. They went to overtime. So whether there would be some unholy alliance in this game tonight, in which the two teams would both agree to arrange a tie to be the final outcome, and for the Ben Roethlisberger to never play another game in a Steelers uniform again.
Yeah, if that happened, do you think it would launch like an NFL investigation into it? I could see them having an issue with that.
How long would that take to resolve?
I don't know. They'd tear up the evidence. Oh man! All right, it is.
But yeah, I think it was a good idea to wait in this circumstance and not do the podcast right after last night's game and kind of talk about the bigger picture. Last night's game was interesting, and maybe it'll have an effect on the postseason, and it already has, I guess, in the way the second round would play out for Dallas should they win this game against the 49ers, but. So they're playing somebody we didn't expect them to be playing in the first round. We've had a preliminary discussion about what kind of team the 49ers are and what you might expect out of them. And the whole Dan Quinn, Kyle Shanahan component should be very fascinating to watch next week and break down after the game.
I can't wait to do it, and I hope that we'll be able to do it there in person, although I love being in the studio. God, you sound good in your studio tonight, Ed. Those headphones sound great, and all that expensive equipment we sent you sounds wonderful as the Cowboys get ready to take on, Kittle, Garoppolo, Debo, Elijah Mitchell. They're all coming in here, and you know what they're going to want to do? Dance on that star. Dance on that star. Dak versus Jimmy G. It's not Aikman versus Steve Young, but it's something. It's a little something, and it's pretty interesting. Ed, I hope you have a great week. You don't have to travel anywhere next weekend. That's going to be great. You get to stay at home. And good work by you today. And by the way, Frito thought we were spending too much time with the Titans earlier. He was really giving me the cut rap. He was saying to wrap it on all that tight.
He's the editor. He can go back into that segment and cut some out if he wants to.
Yeah. When Galloway,
I'm sorry, we cover the whole NFL sometimes.
That's true. Galloway and I used to do that show for 103.3 FM ESPN, Ed, and you would be on with us and everything, but Frito would get so put out because we would fall in love with certain teams. And one of those was like the Utah Jazz.
It's the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Oh, it's the Timberwolves. And we would just
never forgets, obviously.
I love the Jazz, but yeah, it was the Timberwolves, and Frito was our producer. And Galloway and I would just start naming everybody on the Timberwolves and how we loved Minnesota Timberwolves. And Frito got very upset about it. All right, Ed, any last thoughts, anything you want to say to our people, or do you want me just to say good night?
I think you should just good night us, and thanks for waiting the extra day. And I think there was just a lot more interesting, compelling topics to discuss.
Yeah. No, we've established that you had a better thought on this. Okay, it is Mosley Werder for Frito Nation Productions. We're saying good night from far north Dallas. Good night, everybody.
Mosley, your headphones working?
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.